Hello everyone. After we study about the platform concept, operation mode, initialize setup, also the device institute, the next agenda is study about basic networking and SD-WAN. Okay, so in this lesson we will show you the networking configuration, also the SD-WAN in the FortiGate as well. Before we go to study firewall policy and NAT as a inspection, also the security profile and as everyone, right? Okay, so for basic networking and SD-WAN, the first thing that you need to understand is about the interface IP address. And in NAT mode configuration, we already study in the operation mode, right? We have the NAT and transparent. So the NAT we need to configure the IP, and transparent we don't need to configure any IP or associate IP into the interface. Okay, so in NAT mode, you cannot use the interface until you have the IP address config. And in the IP address config, you have two type config, manual assign or automatically. For manual assign, we need to configure IP manually based on IP and subnet mask or secondary IP based on your requirement. For the automatically, we can use with the DHCP and PPPE account from your provider as well, or DHCP server. Yes, so this one is really important to understand the IP that we need to configure in the interface. All right. And another thing is about the interface role and alias. For interface role in the FortiGate, by default, uh, it's using the undefined. So if you don't change any configuration, when you go to the network and interface and you specify edit on which interface that you want to edit, you will see the role is undefined. Okay, so the type of the role we have the four: LAN, WAN, DMZ, and undefined. Okay, so this recommendation to set specifically LAN, WAN, DMZ based on your requirement as well. Okay, so this is the recommend. If you use for WAN connection, you select role as a WAN. If you use to connect to the LAN, you can use the LAN, or to private network for something in your deployment. For public server or delivery zone that you require to config, you use the DMZ. When we use the DMZ role, you cannot config any DHCP server on the interface. And when you use the WAN, you can only set up DHCP manual or PPE on that interface. Cannot broadcast the DHCP to WAN connection. Okay. And another thing is about the alias. Alias in the FortiGate, you can define based on your requirement. For example, your default port is a port 3, right, in this slide, and you can specify alias, for example, internal network. So in your firewall policy, you will be simple to see your firewall or your firewall rule or interface name is alias in front of the physical interface. As you can see, internal network. You can specify, for example, DMZ, database, server farm, server VLAN, whatever you want. It is can make you simple to understand in your firewall policy. So the recommend is set the alias and also the specific role interface as well. And FortiGate firewall, we can do the DHCP server built-in. As you can see, we configure interface port 3 as the role as LAN and manual IP address, administrative access. You can disable or enable based on your requirement. Also, you can see we can enable the DHCP server. In the DHCP server, we can configure the address rank. Address rank means the DHCP pool, like Windows, I mean a feature or role the DHCP server or Cisco as well. They call the DHCP pool, right? So FortiGate as well, it's the same. They have the address rank, so you can set up the address rank or address pool in your interface. And you also can change the default gateway from specific IP address or to another specific IP address, or the same the system interface that you configure. Okay, DNS as well, also the list time. From the DHCP, you can see you also can do the IP address assignment rule. For example, MAC address reservation or DHCP delay agent. Yeah, so you can do that. Also, you can block the MAC address as well in case you require. For example, the action type assign IP, block, or resolve IP. Okay, so this one is the feature, common feature that we can use in the FortiGate LAN role as well. Okay, and another thing is about the link aggregation. So FortiGate also support the link aggregation, and default protocol used in the link aggregation or port channel in the FortiGate is the LACP. Okay, so you make sure that your device that you are connecting to another device support like for example, if the Cisco device, we use the port channel and mode active, right? So make sure that the support from our device, also the neighbor device. Okay, so in the link aggregation, you also can configure the IP address, MCT access, DHCP, yeah, the same the normal interface. Anyway, you also can configure another VLAN inside this link aggregation. Okay, so we go to the SD-WAN. So in FortiGate, we use the SD-WAN for software-defined networking, software-defined WAN. We can do like application routing. We can do like monitor or automatically failover for WAN connection. Okay, so we have the user, we have the switch, we have the AP, and FortiGate firewall. So we can use the FortiGate to do the SD-WAN, and you know FortiGate is the top one vendor for SD-WAN as well for currently in the leader. Okay, so I will share with you in the demo lab as well for networking configuration, also the SD-WAN. Okay, after we configure the network and also the SD-WAN, we understand the SD-WAN. So I will show you another is the static route. So in this lesson, we use the basic route only for the static. So we will configure the default route to the interface of the SD-WAN for reach to the internet. Okay. So let's go to the lab. Okay, log into your firewall. And previously we already set up the WAN 1 and WAN 2, right? As I mentioned, WAN 1 we use the static, and this one we configure from manually in the VM initialize setup. Okay, and you make sure that you use this as the WAN role. You also can use the estimate bandwidth in case you require. Okay, and you can see we don't have the DHCP set up in here for the WAN. If you use the role as well. And this one is the earliest of the interface. You can see port 1 is the internet WAN 1, and port 2 we use the WAN, so you can change role to the WAN. And like I mentioned, we will use this one as the DHCP, so you can configure and renew as well to make sure it is working properly, and retrieve the default gateway from the server. Okay, and we will not override the internal DNS, so we disable it. Okay, and you can disable or enable your interface administrator as well. And this one I will not allow it, only ICMP is allowed on the interface. Okay, and this one is the stats. So I use the port 3 for LAN stats. You can see the alias, and the role is LAN. Okay, and I configure IP manually, and the range stats also allow the ping SH, also the HTTPS, and you may be disable based on your requirement. For example, you don't want your stat access to the firewall, right? So you can disable it. And by default, we don't have the DHCP server enabled, and you can enable it, and after that you can find the address rank that you configure. You can use the default gateway, or you can specifically to another gateway, for example, and this one I use the same interface. Okay, And you can use the DNS server as well, same as system DNS. For example, by default, we use the FortiGate. So in this lab, I will configure manually. For example, client will receive the IP address. DHCP server 1 888 and 2 is 999. Okay, and you also can modify the list time as well for your requirement. For some time, maybe long time, right? So you can check and you can customize it based on your requirement. And the important thing is about the network detection as well, because it's useful when we in the ball we can identify the MAC address filtering, or we can identify the downstream device, for example like OS or any information that our firewall can collect from the neighbor. Okay, so I will demo you another thing is about the link aggregation. For example, I will configure link aggregation PO LAN, and you need to select the type of AU2.3AD aggregate. We have the many types. You can configure loopback, redundancy interface, software, or VLAN. Yeah. Okay. So we configure the link aggregation. So we will use the type, and you can select the interface. For example, I will use 10 and 9, and configure role. For example, if you configure to the DMZ role, you can select the DMZ. But if you want to configure for LAN only, you can select LAN. Okay. And after that, you can configure the IP address. For example, in my lab, I will configure like this. Okay, and allow ping, and also the DHCP. Okay, this is kept default. Okay, done. You can have the link aggregation right now. So in case you use the Cisco switch, you just configure 2 ports with the mode active and get it to this port, right? In case you need to configure sub interface, this one is the if you use the Cisco, for example, you need to configure trunk and native, right? Native VLAN, and configure this IP, you will be read to your device. Anyway, some case you need to configure the VLAN, for example, VLAN start. Okay, and your start is under port channel. Okay, and VLAN 100, for example. Okay, so, and then you need to configure IP address of your start VLAN and allow only ping. Also, you can use the DHCP server in case you want. Okay. Okay, so the VLAN 100 will be associated under this port channel. So on your switch, you just take the VLAN 100 and set up the SVI, or take the VLAN to the user or client machine with port access, for example 100. So your client will be read to the FortiGate firewall, right? So this is the sample, or you can configure link aggregation, also the sub interface on the FortiGate. Okay, so now let's go to the SD-WAN. So I think I can demo again. So we need to create SD-WAN zone first. For example, SD-WAN internet, and you have by default you cannot see this one, so I will show you first. You need to create zone, and then you need to create the member. Okay, in the member, firstly you can select like this, for example, but in my lab I will show you. Okay, so I need first I need to remove this one first. For example, I change this interface to new SD-WAN zone, for example. Okay, and this one also. Okay, I change to new SD-WAN that I just created, and the gateway is retrieve automatically from the ACP, because the WAN tool is being used as the ACP, right? And in case you cannot find, you can create zone and you can create a member. For example, you have like port 4, right? So you can select port 4 and then you select the SD-WAN zone that you want to configure. And after that, you need to configure gateway. For example, if you use the static, you need to manually configure static, the gateway here. Because when you use the static route, you will use the SD-WAN zone, not the physical one. Okay, so make sure that you configure properly about the SD-WAN gateway. For example, WAN 1 is 10.10.10.254, and WAN 2 is 192.168.105.102. Okay, so make sure you configure properly. And after that, you need to configure the performance SLA. For example, you can basic config like it take 111. Okay, and you need to select the participant. For example, you have the all SD-WAN member. If you want to specific, also fine, because sometimes you have many SD-WAN member, right? Okay, so firstly you need to add the SLA target as well. For example, by default is latency is 5 milliseconds jitter, and you can enable it first to get some information, and then you can customize it later. Okay. Okay, so now you can see the latency is around 60, so I can move, like for example, latency maybe around this one is okay. Also the jitter threshold you can see 10. Okay, so I will consider use like 30 or 20. Okay, okay, so after we configure this one, we need to configure the SD-WAN rule. For example, I can create the normal traffic first and select the best quality, and the zone is the new zone. Okay, and you can select the interface preference, and then you can select the measure SLA that we just config. For example, detect 111, and criteria is a packet load. So if any packet load on the interface, we will use another interface. This one is the basic rule. Okay, anyway you can create based on your requirement. For example, like meeting, right? For example, all destination we will use the internet service. Okay, for example, we use the Zoom. Okay, you can see Zoom meeting, public. Okay, public. Okay, Microsoft Teams. Okay, for example, you can select the internet service or destination that you want to customize. Okay, and for example, this one we need the lowest cost, right? For example, we can select our WAN connection, also the SD-WAN zone. We have the SD-WAN internet and detect 111, and it will be checked which is the lowest cost SLA. Anyway, the Zoom or any meeting should be best quality, right? So they measure, and you can consider about the quality criteria. Okay, you can use the jitter, packet loss, or bandwidth. It is based on your application requirement or internet service requirement or destination. Anyway, you also can use the manual. For example, you can manual to port 1. Okay, so after that you can see that select is a port 1. Okay, let me check first, because we use the SD-WAN zone. Okay, so we need to disable. And this one is just example. Anyway, it based on your requirement. For example, this destination internet should be by quality. Okay, this one is just a demo to you only. So based on your requirement, you can edit or select the member that you want to require or priority the traffic. Okay, you also customize the destination or internet service to other WAN as well, in case sometimes you have the normal broadband or DIA connection, so you can manual it to another. So if another WAN unstable or lost, you can automatically fail over to another available WAN link. Okay, it's special or flexible than use the policy route. Okay, so after you understand about the SD-WAN, we need to configure static route or any routing that you want to priority. For example, this interface we already removed it, right? So we will use the new SD-WAN zone. Okay, so you can see the destination 000/0, all to this SD-WAN interface. So all your route information will be follow this one. Okay, so we cancel get router info routing. So you can see the static route will be reached to the port 1 and port 2, and this one is the gateway. Okay, so that's all for networking and SD-WAN setup on the FortiGate. Anyway, it is for basic only, so you can test, you can do and test one by one, failover, whatever, to clarify your lab as well in networking, also the SD-WAN, also the routing. So thank you for today. Bye bye.